All right, beautiful people. Today we're going to start our integer unit. And so we're going to work with integers for the next week or so. And we're going to learn how to add, subtract, multiply, and divide them. So this is our first unit on that. And this is going to focus on adding and subtracting integers. And this is going to be our first steps. And if we can master our first steps, it's going to help us be really successful on adding and subtracting integers. So when adding and subtracting, it's really important that you realize this is for adding and subtracting integers. We are going to circle our numbers, and we need to include the sign in the front of them, and then we are going to rewrite our numbers based on the rules that we learned today. Okay, so we are going to circle the numbers with the sign in front, and then we are going to rewrite those numbers. And then after we rewrite those numbers, we are going to make an integer table. Okay, an integer table. And an integer table looks like that. Okay, so this is going to make a whole lot more sense as we go through some examples. All right, so my first example says -5 plus 3. So I'm going to start at the back of my problem, and I'm going to start by circling the back of the 3 all the way to the back of the 5. Okay, so I want everything inside of here to be circled because I don't want this 5 is going to be circled on its own. Okay, so then I'm going to circle from the back of the 5 to the front of the problem. Okay, so now everything is circled and it has its sign in front, right? We want the sign in the front to be in our circle. All right, so now we are going to do the rewrite step. Okay, so we're going to rewrite these problems. And so what is inside my first circle? Well, that is a -5. What is inside my second circle? Well, that is a +3. So now I'm not thinking about this as an add and subtract problem. I'm separating them into two separate integers. So I have a -5 and a +3. And then I'm going to put those on my integer table. So I'm going to draw my integer table, and I'm going to sort them into positives and negatives. So all my positives are going to go on the left. All of my negatives are going to go on the right. And that is the last step for today. We will add steps in the future, but today that's all we're focusing on is separating our positives and negatives, okay? So I'm gonna put my +3 under the positive side, and I'm gonna put my 5 for negative on the negative side. You notice that I didn't write the signs because I'm focusing on the fact that everything on this side is a negative and everything on this side is a positive, okay? And so that is what we are doing today. So let's look at example number 2. So example number 2, we're gonna start at the back of the 7, and I'm gonna circle all the way to the back of the 4. Okay, I wanna go all the way from the back of the 7 to the back of the 4, and then in front of that, I'm gonna circle from the back of the 4 to the front of the number. And then I'm gonna rewrite what is inside those circles. So I have in my first circle a -4. There's no other signs in there. Now the second circle has multiple signs. So you can see here I have a plus sign and I have a minus sign. And so we call this, in our math, we call this good versus evil, okay? So we have a good and we have an evil, and when they are together, evil wins in math, okay? So we're gonna do a nice evil laugh. We're gonna say evil wins, mwahahaha. All right, and so we are going to get rid of the good, and we're gonna keep that evil -7, okay? So in math, good versus evil, evil is gonna win, all right? And then we are gonna draw our positive, negative table, our integer table, and we're just gonna sort them. So you can see in this problem that both of my numbers were actually negative. So they are both gonna live on the negative side of my integer table. And again, that's our last step for today. We will learn how to finish solving in the next couple of days. All right, so today we're focusing on circling, rewriting, and making our table. All right, let's look at example number 3. So example number 3 says 6 minus 10. Now, this doesn't particularly look like an integer problem, but I know it is because if I had $6, I cannot spend $10. So I know that I'm going to end up with a negative because the 10 is more than the 6. okay? So I know this is an integer problem, so I'm going to use my integer strategy. Start at the back of the 10, circle all the way to the back of the 6, and then start at the back of the 6 and circle all the way to the front. All right? And then again, I'm just rewriting my numbers. What's inside the first circle? Well, that's a positive 6. What's inside my second circle? Well, that's a negative 10. So I throw my integer table, my positive, negative, and I'm going to sort them. I had a 6 that was positive, and I had a 10 that was negative. Okay? And then example number 4, I am going to circle from the back of my numbers. So this time I have parentheses and stuff. I'm still going to go from the back of the 8 to the back of the 12. And then in the front, I'm going to circle from the back of the 12 to the front of the number. In the 12 circle, I have a positive 12. And in my second circle, I have 2 signs again, kind of like I did in example number 2. So this time I have a negative and another negative. And so this is another one of our rules. So we call this 2 evils. Remember, negatives are evils. So 2 evils actually make a positive, okay? So 2 evils make a positive. And if you think about it, 2 subtraction signs, when you put them together, make a plus sign. And so this is actually going to become a giant plus sign right here. And so inside of this circle is a positive 8. All right? And so now I'm going to throw those on my integer table. Again, I use this table for adding and subtracting. And I'm just going to sort. Well, I have a 12 that's positive, and I have an 8 that's positive. And so they all live on the positive side because they were both positive. All right. And then let's try our last example where we have more than 2 numbers. So the rules still apply. We're going to start at the back of the number, and I'm going to circle from the back of the 5 to the back of the 4. And then I'm going to circle from the back of the 4 to the back of the 8. And then I'm going to circle from the back of the 8 to the front of the problem. I'm going to rewrite my numbers. So I have a negative 8. I have a negative 4. And I have a positive 5. So again, now I'm not thinking about it like adding and subtracting. I'm thinking about it as 3 separate integers. I'm going to put my positive, negative table. And I'm just going to sort my numbers. So my 8 was a negative, it goes on the negative side. My 4 was a negative, it goes on the negative side. And my 5 was a positive, it goes on the positive side. And that is our integer intro lesson, guys. So big things to remember. We circle from the back of the back number to the back of the next one. And from the back of that all the way to the front. All right, we use our positive and negative integer table. And we sort our numbers based on, are they a positive or are they a negative? Remember, if you have good versus evil, and good versus evil again was just positive and negative, if you have both of them circled, then evil is going to win. Bah, ha, 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 ha. And if you have 2 evils, which again is just going to be 2 negatives in the same circle, then they are going to get together and become besties and become a positive sign. All right, and that is your integer intro lesson.